Hello everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today I'll be explaining about EVs and natures in Pokemon Sword and Shield because they are so impactful in competitive gameplay. And they are a little hard to understand if you're not familiar with it, so I think you should just jump straight into it. So starting out with the natures, the very basic is that you have 5 stats that natures can affect. And they reduce or increase these stats by 10%. And you can see here, for example, we have the attack stat. If you boost the attack stat of a Pokemon by 10%, there's these natures that do it, and then they reduce that. An opposing stat, for example, for Brave Nature, you increase the attack by 10%, but you reduce a Pokemon's speed by 10% too. And there's a lot of different ones that affect basically all the stats that Pokemon has, except for HP. You can't. There's no nature that affects the HP. That's always the same. But there's a lot depending on the Pokemon's role. And if you want to know about breeding the right natures and breeding in general, and same for EVs, which also affect Pokemon stats, blah blah blah, there's also a link to a guide for that down below. But you can see, for example, if you have a Pokemon that you want to be able to take physical hits, then you can run Bold or Impish or Relaxed. There's some that I don't mention, and generally what you don't want is you don't want a neutral nature, because your Pokemon always has a role, whatever that role ends up being. So having a neutral nature, I play competitive for a little over 2 years now. 3 years actually, almost. I've never once been in a situation where a neutral nature has been beneficial, so generally ignore those, and ignore the ones that increase one defense but lowers another. They're also generally not quite good, like Gentle and Axe, not really good, but the rest are pretty serious to know, so let's go in to look at them in practice. Okay, so we're in Pokemon Showdown, which I will say is a great resource for when you're playing around with natures and EV spreads and movesets and all that. So I have a link to the software down below. You can use it either online or you can download it to your computer. There's no virus, no nothing, and it's completely free. So looking at Serebii, for example, who is a very good Pokemon VGC currently due to its G-Max form and its ability Libero, which I probably butchered, you see that this Pokemon, it has a very good physical attack and it has a very good speed. These stats, they obviously affect how you want to build your Serebii. Now, generally what you want to do is that you want to most often increase your best stat while reducing your worst. So in a case like Serebii, we see that, okay, speed is the best stat that we have. So we want the speed to be good. And going in to look at the chart that we had before, we can see that, okay, we want our special attack lowered, but we want our speed increased, so we want a Jolly nature on this Pokemon. So we're going back in, okay, we go down, we go nature, we go Jolly. And have an eye on the stats. Currently, you can see that the special attack is at 85, while the speed is at 139. We just had the special attack reduced to 76, while the speed got increased to 152. So it goes in and, takes 10% from the special attack and puts an extra 10% on the speed. There are exceptions to this, however, and I have a couple of them lined up. I have a Pokemon like Excadrill. Excadrill kind of has the same role as Serebii, is that it's a fast, hard-hitting Pokemon, largely due to the fact that it, for example, has Sand Rush. And Excadrill, it has a good HP, but its defense stats are not the greatest, and the role is to be fast and hard-hitting. So even though your attack is absolutely great, what you'll often want to do is that you will actually want to increase your speed like you did with Serebii, so you became Jolly instead. Because you don't want to risk getting outsped by other Excadrills or that has a speed below you, who can outspeed you if they have a speed boosting nature, something like Rotom, for example. You don't want to be slower than a Rotom. So you'll end up, instead of running the anime nature, which, mind you, would give you a whopping 170 attack stat without anything, you'll usually want to run Jolly instead. Another example is Lapras, which you often use for G-Max form. And since you use it for G-Max form, even though you have your special defense is by far your best stat, you want to make sure that you can take proper advantage of it. And you end up instead often, there are obviously exceptions, that's the whole thing of this, there's no right or wrong, I'm just speaking in general terms. Generally you want Lapras to hit faster. You'll have like Hydro Pump, and you'll have like Ice Beam, Freeze Dry, Blizzard, depending on how frisky you are, and you'll have something like Thunder. So your goal is to do damage. So even though your special defense is the highest, you'll often want to increase your special attack instead. Now, Lapras' lowest stat is its speed. However, since you often want to run Lapras as a special attacker, which is largely due to its moveset, it doesn't really have the best physical moveset in general, you don't need to reduce its speed. because you're not using its physical attack. And even though the speed is, the lowest stat, is if you're not using a stat, which for a lot of Pokemon, you either only use the special or the physical attack. So the opposite one will always be safe to reduce. So for Lapras, you'd, instead of wanting to lower speed and raise the special attack, you want to lower the attack and raise the special attack, which is, as you can see here, you will want to run a modest nature. Going into something like Torkoal, you kind of have the same thing, except much more obvious. Torkoal has a massive defense stat. However, in competitive Pokemon, Torkoal is often used for its ability to set the sun. And it has an incredibly low speed, which makes it very good under Trick Room conditions, where the slowest Pokemon move first. So for Torkoal, even though you have the 140 base defense, not really what you want to invest in. Because you have a Pokemon that sets sun, so it boosts its fire damage a lot. And it also gets a move like Eruption that hits both Pokemon with 150 base power move if it's a full health. And under Trick Room, it moves first, so you get some very powerful hits off. So instead, you'll like with Lapras, you'll want to increase your special attack. But because you have such a low speed, here you will go in and reduce the speed, because this Pokemon is very good on Trick Room, as I said. So you want to, instead of having, lowering its attack, which you also don't really need, you'll go in and lower its speed. So you'll go in and find that you need a minus speed plus special attack, a quiet nature. So as you can see, what you increase and what you decrease is not always fully dependent on the stat of the Pokemon. It has also often has something to do with what the Pokemon's role is. Now, there are Pokemon that can run both physical and special movesets, or even mix movesets together very well. An example of this is a Pokemon like Infernape, which, mind you, is not legal right now, but it's actually the best example of it. Because Infernape has 104 attack and 104 special attack. So that means that you can run a mixed moveset, so you can have close combat because it's your best fighting move. But you can also have Overheat, for example, where you don't really care that you lower your attack by special attack by 2 stages, because you're mixed, so you can fire off strong close combats anyway afterwards. So in this case, because you have both physical and special moves, and you're a very fast Pokemon that doesn't want to get outsped because you're not particularly bulky, you'll want to increase your speed, but you don't want to decrease any of your attacks. So what you do instead is that you go in and you actually begin to look into lowering your defenses. So you run, for example, a naive nature or a hasty nature, because this Pokemon, it's the role for this Pokemon is not to be able to take hits, it's to hit hard and be fast. So that's one of the cases where the minus defenses natures are pretty good. I often end up running naive because most priority attacks are physical, but that's always a preference and depends on your team and what you're facing and yada yada yada. But that's an example of that. Now moving over to the EVs, also known as the effort values. These are a number. You can actually see them down here that they say the remaining. These effort values, they go in, you have 508 in total that you can invest into each of your stats. You can, however, maximum invest 252 into one. So if you, for example, go in and you say, okay, I want my Cinderace to be as invested as you can in attack and in speed, you can go in and see here. First of all, this should be 31. Reason for that is in the breeding guide down below. You want to increase your attack, so you can, and this is where Showdown is especially nice, because you can drag this and you can see how the stat changes and increases. So you can see when we go up to max, we get 168 attack compared to the 136 that we had before. So it's quite an increase that you can get. Where we do the same as speed, and suddenly you have 188 speed, which leaves you with 4 that you can then put in whatever. Often if you're playing singles, you want to have an uneven HP number. If you play doubles, doesn't matter as much. On Cinderace, since you often run a high jump kick, you probably want an uneven, just so you don't faint when you miss it for the second time. But that's pure preference. Something that's important when you're planning out your EVs are that you're doing it at the level that you're going to play competitive your games at, which, for example, if you're playing VTC or most singles formats, basically most formats, it's going to be a level 50, and I'm going to show you why. Because let's go in and we look at Cinderace here. And you can see for every 4 that we add, it's very nitpicky right now, it increases it with 1. It increases the stat by 1 for every 4 EVs we put into it. But this is at level 100, and at level 100, that's how it works. So let's just go in and see here. 4, 8, 12, it increases for every single one. Now we go down to 50, because this is where it becomes a little bit more funky. You start out with 4, yes, that changes it. But you skip up to 12 for the next stat, because what you can see is, okay, for 0, 136. When we have 4, it goes to 137. If you go to 8, you're still 137, and that's because it doesn't really work the same way when you scale it down on level with the IVs. So here you have to go up to 12 to get the increase. So always put in IVs when you're doing it, because otherwise you're going to end up wasting IVs, and that's something you really don't want to do, because suddenly you have 4 IVs that run here, that you lose here, and then you also lose them here, and you could invest them into something else, or then maybe live a hit that you otherwise couldn't hit, or whatnot. So always do that. Going to play into some of the other Pokemon stats, something like Lapras, for example. You want it to hit hard, so you will want its special attack to be at the highest, but it's also a bulky Pokemon. Actually, Torkoal is a better example of this. You want it to have its absolutely highest special attack it can possibly get, so you can do as much damage as possible. But you have already reduced your speed, so you don't want your speed. So what you'll often end up doing, unless you're specifically calculating for living certain hits, is that you'll just put it in HP, take as many hits as possible, and then put them in one of your defense for the last ones, because again, you don't need your attack. And obviously it can become very nitty-gritty with the spreads. I'll show you some of mine, for example. So this, for example, is a Whimsicott I'm using in competitive currently. And you can see this Whimsicott is very, very detailed, and that's because I wanted it to have the highest speed that it can, so it can't be outsped by other Whimsicotts. But I also needed it to live a dual wing beast from a Sharp Beak Talonflame, so I needed the defense and the HP, and this was the combination where I used the least IVs to get that, and then putting the rest into special attack and special defense to be able to live as many hits as possible. Where other people, they would, for example, choose to run their Whimsicotts like this instead, where they have maximum speed and maximum special attack, and then run something like Movesets, like I also had on mine, so you're guaranteed to live a hit, for example. That's actually the most common spread for Whimsicotts, and then you have for wherever. So to show you how it looks in-game, I will show you my cute little Whimsicott here. It doesn't have the right IVs as I had in that fancy one. It's the very standard Whimsicott. You see, we are going in, first seeing here, okay. You can see it's nature. The stat that's reduced is a blue, the one that's increased is a red, so we can see that it has a timid nature. So it's boosting its speed and lowering its attack. And you can see what stats are, level 100, because I had to train mine to level 100. And if you click X, you can go in and you can see the IVs. Now you can see on Whimsicott here that it has the spikes out that are gray, and they sparkle. This means that this Pokemon has it has invested all of its effort values, so I've used all the 508. And I have maximized its special attack and its speed. An example that isn't like this is, for example, Cinnamoroll, where you can see I've also used all of its EVs, but only the HP has been fully invested in. The others are just somewhat invested. And for this Talonflame, which is just a random Talonflame I used when I had Shax, you see that it has some EVs, but it's darker yellow instead of being gray, which means that I haven't used all my effort values yet. At this point, we have covered what natures are and how they affect the stats and how you pick one, as well as what EVs are and how you can use them to make your Pokemon fulfill its role in the team even better. So the next question is, obviously, how do you EV train? And for that, we are going to the interwebs. Right now we're on Serebii.net, and we're starting here. There are multiple ways that you can EV train your Pokemon, but we're starting here because the cheapest way to do it is to do it through wild encounters. And I'll just, throw Pokemon for each stat, how you can boost them. For example, if you want to boost your HP, you can battle Wobbuffets. And if we go in here, you can see down here that effort value is earned. You earn 2 HP points, meaning 2 IVs, sorry, not IVs, EVs, in HP every time you knock out a Wobbuffet. Now, this can be boosted quite a bit. There's a thing called Pokerus, which is basically a rare virus that you can get in game, but if you don't have it in your own game, you can go to trading places like Reddit. You can probably also join some Discord servers. It's very accessible if you reach out. And what that does is that instead of getting 2 HP points when you knock out a Wobbuffet, you'll get 4, so it basically doubles it. And that becomes very nice because there's also another way that can really help you increase the EVs that you gain every time you knock out a Pokemon, and that is power items. And these you can see from 10 battle points in Hammerlock. And these, if you give your Pokemon these to hold, you get an extra, for example, if you put on the power weight, 8 HP EVs. So if you don't have the Pokerus, that means that when you knock out a Wobbuffet and you hold the power weight, you get 10 EVs in your HP. But obviously if you then have the Pokerus, again it's double, so you actually end up getting 20 HP EVs every time you knock out a Pokemon. If you don't want to sit and knock out Pokemon, there's also another way, and that is to use vitamins. And you can see that I just have them here. I just basically Googled Pokemon vitamins. You see we have the HP up that gives you 10 HP EVs, and the same for all the other ones. These are, as you can see, this is made before the DLC, but 10,000 Pokédolls each. They're pretty expensive. You can get them cheaper if you have the Isle of Armor DLC and you upgrade the vending machines. You can get them cheaper, but it's still, in the long run, it's pretty expensive. Personally, I combine usually wild encounters with the vitamins, at least if I have like more specific sets. Another thing that's also accessible is feathers. You can find them on the bridges, and you can also find a lot of them actually in the DLC. And these here, these also boost the EVs of each of these stats. You know, you can see what they call, what they boost, but they only boost them by 1. So in the case where we have some more complex EV spreads, like for example, I think I already showed you this Whimsicott, you could, for the HP, you could give it 7 HP ups, which gives you the 70 HP, and you could give it 6 of the health feathers. And if you do that, you already have the 76, like exactly on point. What I would do in this case here with Whimsicott is that I would use vitamins and feathers to put in the HP, the special attack, and then the speed. Give it the power anklet and then run into Pokemon that gives the defense EVs. And the reason for this is that the power anklet obviously gives a lot more EVs than running into the Pokemon specifically does. So I'll get my speed EV boosted the most or the fastest, which is good because I want it to be absolutely maxed. So there's no like specific numbers that I need to remember with the encounter and such. When I have that, I can switch over to the one that boosts the defense and get the rest of them done. Now, to give you a little bit of a resource for starting out with the wild encounter, so I already showed the Wobbuffet gives you HP. If you want attack, however, something like Machoke, all of these can be found in the wild area, but Machoke, for example, gives you 2 attack points. Pumpkaboo, who gives you 1 defense point, and it is less. When you have Pokerus on the power items, it doesn't really matter whether it's 1 or 2 that it gives so free for the really strong Pokemon. It doesn't really matter. The most important thing is that you get the power items on them and get Pokerus. For special attack, something like Ghastly. For special defense, I usually go to knocking out some Nick hits, which I feel a little bit bad about because it's a Q Fox, but you know, it's fine. And for speed, more often than not, I end up with something like the Noon, who gives you 2 speed points. So that was a quick nature and EV guide. I hope you got something out of it. Hopefully, fingers crossed, and it can help you transition into competitive Pokemon because, you know, it's a lot of fun to play. But with that, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, keep cool. Bye.